So
Oh,
who knows who's going to be interrupted.
yeah. I hope that you're talking when he comes so I can mute. That's always the trick. All right. So we are going to go. We'll start at three, two, one. What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Glow Up Podcast. We are recording remotely, but still a part of the Soundcasting Network here in Seattle, Washington. I am Miss Casey Carter, and unfortunately, I am flying solo today. Naomi is out enjoying herself, and Maurice supposed to be here, but unfortunately, he had something that came up and cannot join me. But it is all good. Y'all know I like to hold it down. Before we get into everything, I got to remind y'all to rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. Follow us at the Glow Up Cast on all social media platforms. Sign up for our Glow Gang Spotlight if you are a small business and want some extra shine on your business. Sign up for our email list as well so you can get some exclusive discounts. And don't forget, we are on YouTube too. You can find all of those links in the link in our bio. I got to shout out Emily Orlando. A few weeks ago, we took 2 weeks of breaks, but we're back. But shout out to Emily Orlando with the Infertile Millennial. I don't know if you guys got a chance to listen to that episode yet, but as you guys know, that episode and that particular subject is very near and dear to my heart. So please check it out if you haven't. She's doing really amazing work by bringing awareness to infertility, and doing a really great job at being able to show up for your friends and loved ones who are going through infertility. So make sure to check that out. This week, we are joined by JJ Kissinger of the Light Collective, an organization serving families who have seriously ill children here in the Northwest. Thank you for joining me, JJ. You're like my co-host today.
I know, I love it. I'm playing all the roles: co-host, guest, producer. Who knows by the end of the show what I'll be doing?
Yes. Well, thank you so much again. Let's do some catching up. Let's get into our weekly wins and lessons.
Love it.
I have a week. It seems like we've been hitting the lessons. It seems like all since the world is opening up every week. I think we've had lessons. And
Yes.
if you're a frequent listener of the show, you're a follower of mine, you know that I am obsessed with the On Purpose podcast hosted by Jay Shetty. And this week, or I believe it was last week, he had Dr. Shafali on the show. And she shared this message that I almost crashed my car on the freeway. It blew my mind. She said, as women, we give power to men when we compete with one another. And it just hit so hard. And it was just a beautiful lesson. The whole entire episode is really, really great. If you are a woman or you have daughters, wives, you have women in your life, you should listen to this episode. It's really important. And it just talks about breaking off the crap that we hold onto us, that is put onto us by society and all the standards and who you need to be and how you need to be. And this is how you are. If you're not this way, you're not a successful woman. Very, very great episode. How about you, JJ? Do you have any weekly wins or lessons?
Yeah, I feel like as often is the case, the win and the lesson is almost like one and the same thing, right? That for me, the win was that our Light Collective website is now findable on Google. Oh, hey.
Yay.
And that's a small thing, but the lesson that's connected to it was, we are a kind of new startup organization, and there's a whole bunch of things that we are kind of trying to figure out how to put in place. So we created this website, and then I kept hearing about things like SEO, and I didn't know what that meant or what to do about it. And all I knew is that I'd Google our organization and we wouldn't show up anywhere. So this couple who have their own experience with childhood cancer with their own kiddos approached and said, "Hey, we'd love to find out how we can get involved with the Light Collective." And I kind of said, "Okay, what do you got? What do you do?" And they're both involved in marketing. And so I was kind of telling them about that. And they just took all of our passwords and everything and went in and worked their magic. And suddenly, ta-da, we're findable on Google. So the lesson of just realizing what the goodness that happens when you ask for help, when you're willing to ask for help and receive help, and realize that you don't actually have to be the best person at everything, and that there's other people who would be delighted to help you with the things that you kind of suck at. So always more to learn about that. That's for sure.
That's a great lesson and a great win for you guys. As I think everyone is always so scared to let others know they don't know something sometimes.
Yes, yes.
And I love asking for help.
I
So
know. Yeah, there's that old saying, if you want to make a friend, ask for help. And I think it's true. And people light up when they're asked to do the thing that they're really good at. So why would we not do it? And of course, the reason is pride and some reason that I think I should be able to do everything by myself, which is, a lot of that Americanness and whiteness and maleness that I'm trying to shed.
great lessons, great wins. Well, let's hop into our vibe check.
hmm
Is there anything that you're currently vibing with at the moment?
Well, it's sort of funny. I am completely vibing with a show called Alone. Have you heard of this show? It's on the
No.
History Channel. So there's a lot
Okay.
that's kind of off brand for me on this show. It's a reality show. It's 10 contestants who get dropped off at various locations in like super rugged and remote areas. And they have to film their whole experience by themselves. And the whole thing is whoever's the last person to not kind of tap out and call in for help gets $500,000. So I'm not like a outdoorsman. I'm not a huge camper. I've never been hunting. None of that is like my vibe. But this show like sucked me in. These people are so hardcore. And I think I was thinking about it, and I feel like it's probably because working at home in quarantine and especially doing this new thing sort of by myself in my house without any office mates or colleagues, I felt really lonely, and I'm a huge extrovert, so that's not been the best for me. So I feel like maybe I'm watching this show as kind of like a subtle reminder that like my experience of aloneness is nowhere near as bad as it could be because these people are like alone and going kind of nutty over it. But I'm binging the heck out of it. So that's my off-brand vibe at the moment.
And they're like finding food, like they are left with nothing, so they have to
They are
figure everything
literally
out.
like they're like making traps for mice and eating them. There was a lady the other day who caught some animal and ate the stuff out of its stomach.
Oh my god.
I mean, Casey, it is not great. They are
That's
in a hard way, but 50,000 or 500,000, excuse me, is a lot of money. So they're motivated. But it's interesting because almost all of them who they have a little satellite phone that they use to tap out, and almost all of them tap out because of the loneliness, not because of hunger or
oh,
danger or the conditions. It's just the loneliness, which I think is so interesting.
I'm in. I'm gonna have to check this one
It's
out.
so good. It's so good.
Okay. I like that one. Well, since it's been a few weeks since we've been on the show, I just gotta quickly shout out HBO Max because that is like, wow, they are killing it with that. Cruella was a very cute movie. I got to go to the movies last week and into the theater and watch that, and I
Oh,
was very, very impressed. But what I am truly vibing with is for all my Law and Order people out there. I'm a big SVU girl, and Detective Stabler has got his own show now. It's organized crime. And my goodness, are they doing a really good job with that show? I binged the whole thing this week. And yeah, Detective
so
Stabler.
good.
Yeah, it's that good. And Olivia's in there a little bit. And they just I felt like I was watching a series, like a mini movie. It was
Yep.
really good. So if you are into that, definitely check that out. All right, you
HBO
guys.
Max killing the game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just watched In the Heights last night. So,
Oh, I can't wait
yeah,
to watch that.
that's
So
a good
good.
one. That's a good one. All right, you guys, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back to talk with JJ. And okay. All right, you guys, we are back. And again, we are talking with JJ Kissinger. He is from the Light Collective, an organization serving families who have seriously ill children here in the Pacific Northwest. Before the cameras turned on, he caught me saying that I've been crying this morning just because of the amazing work that you're doing. And I don't know, I'm very sensitive. Mercury's in retrograde, I could blame all of that. But honestly, what you are doing is just so incredibly powerful. So I'm so excited to get to know more about you and the Light Collective. But first, let's get to know JJ. So I know you're from Colorado and you came here in the late 90s. Tell us more about yourself. Who was JJ growing up?
Oh man, JJ growing up was total suburban uh, guy. My dad was a pastor at a big church in Colorado, so I grew up as a church kid. I've kind of always been a church guy, and I came to Seattle to go to college, so I was ready. I grew up in, just like very classic mid-American suburbia land with all the like Home Depots and Old Navies and beige housing developments that you could possibly imagine. So I was ready to break out of that and live in the city. But being a church guy, I also was looking for that. So I went to Seattle Pacific University, and it's been really great for me. That was in 98 that I came out here, and Seattle has been a space, I think that kind of coastal vibe versus the mid American vibe. I've learned a lot and grown a lot and changed a lot in the, I guess now like 20 some odd years that I've been here. And I ended up working at SPU for a number of years after I graduated, and then went to seminary and got my Master's of Divinity, which makes me sound very holy. And then I worked for the last about 9 years at a church running an outreach program for families who have seriously ill children. And that kind of in the last year turned into all of that experience and those connections and being part of that community turned into an opportunity to launch the Light Collective. So it's been really fun to kind of uh, I've never been a person who's had a really clear sense of what I'm supposed to do. I think growing up in the church and having a lot of people in that space that really loved me and cared for me really well. I'm not a person that has a huge amount of like church baggage. I had a really good experience of being cared for. The I always just kind of felt like maybe that's the kind of work that I'm supposed to do. And that's why I went to SPU. That's why I got my Master's of Divinity. But doing all of those things, I always felt a little reluctant. Like I never imagined myself as a pastor. I just didn't, that never felt like the right fit. And every job I've landed in has been much more about kind of relationship and providing care for people in difficult times, which I guess is the same as a pastor, or in some ways. But um, I've just never felt that kind of sense of call to go into that sort of role, despite what my education and training
Yeah.
might tell you. So, really, a lot of my vocational life has been kind of stumbling into opportunities that have ended up being really extraordinary and really educational for me in figuring out kind of who I want to be and what kind of work I want to do.
Now, I know with when people step into the role of this kind of work where you're supporting a specific very niche situation or cause,
Yeah.
and usually there's like some tie, like for example, fertility for me is so important, so that's the role I'm looking to step into. Somebody's mother may have passed away from cancer, so that's what they want to pursue. For you, how was working with children who were seriously ill something that drew you to that? How did that draw you?
Yeah, such a good question. I have no meaningful experience in my own life with seriously ill children, kids with cancer, anything like that. And frankly, a lot of it was when my wife Lisa and I were living in Vancouver, BC, while I was doing my master's. We had hopes in that season of starting a family, and we ran into a bunch of infertility issues as well. And simultaneously, as part of my training, I was doing a hospital chaplaincy. So I was showing up as like the chaplain person in these spaces where people were suffering. I was assigned to the palliative care unit, so people who were dying, and really asking all of these really heavy questions. And my supervisor, he just said, JJ, you're really good at this. And I was like, really? Can I be good at like hosting a talk show or something that's like a little bit more interesting? This is so sad. But I think those two experiences happening next to each other meant that I was being challenged to think about what does it look like for me to show up in these spaces, in these hospital rooms where people were suffering. And at the same time, I was in a really fragile place myself, dealing with this pretty medical situation that we were working on. and on the receiving end of care of all kinds, really helpful kind of care, and then the kind of care that people feel like they're being caring, but it ends up making you just feel like a big pile of poop. So it was an educational time, and I think all of that. I don't think without that those two experiences, I don't think that I would have taken on the job that I was in for the last 9 years. I don't think I would have felt excited about it or qualified for it or interested in it. But I think when you've experienced someone caring for you well in a really tender space, you know that it can change everything. It's a lifeline. And when you've experienced someone trying to care for you in ways that are actually harmful and painful, you kind of almost all that you want to do is to help people to stop being that way, help people stop acting like jerks when they're trying to provide care. So this just felt like a space where I could put some of those things to practice. And, I also in college during the summers, I worked at a summer camp, and I've always loved working with kids and being goofy and, thinking of fun games and ways to be silly. So there's kind of all of those streams coming together in this role.
It seems like this path was very like clear. It was laid out for you, and you were just along it, and you didn't know where it was going, but it was already laid out for you. For
Yes, that's such a good way to put it. And I have to say, I mean, I really, I knew I had been connected to this previous organization before I started working there. And when the previous director had left, I thought, oh, who's going to be the director of that? That's such a cool program. And Lisa was like, you should do it. And I was like, oh, really? And I kind of have stumbled into all of these things. And it really wasn't until about 8 months ago that I, in the midst of kind of transitioning out of that job and into this idea of forming this new organization, that was really the first time that I felt like I was owning where I wanted to go instead of it just kind of happening to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
I think it is when you kind of look back at all of those really wonderful serendipitous moments of kind of landing in the right place, you realize there's some themes there. And then you start paying attention to that and going, oh, okay, I'm actually going to stick with that and not entertain all of these other ideas that I might have, but I'm going to stick with these themes of where I have noticed myself coming alive in the past. And it does. I feel really lucky. I mean, who gets to have this story that in the midst of a global pandemic, you get to like create your dream job? It feels really amazing.
That's incredible. And I wanted that's you kind of mentioned something that I wanted to ask you. Through this path, what were some of the other ideas or other paths that you were thinking of going?
Wow. Yeah. The it's such an interesting question. I thought about, I knew that I had kind of found my orientation with running a program. So I knew that there were some things about just kind of managing a program and empowering other people and empowering volunteers. So I was generally feeling really open to kind of the nonprofit world. And I, had kind of reached out and put the, signals out to a few different organizations. And it's strange because I just kind of kept coming back to how meaningful the work that I was doing felt to me, and that I really wanted to stay in that zone. And then also recognizing that I had some pretty unique ideas that I felt like I had this opportunity to kind of bring some of these unique ideas to life. Um, Really, it was more the specific idea that drove it all. I think that I heard someone talk about once that like ideas are these things that kind of have a life of their own. And have you ever had that thing where you like have an idea of, oh, it would be so cool if there was like an invention that did blah.
Mhm.
And then like 8 months later, you see that invention and you're like, dang it, I should have done that myself. That
Yeah.
I feel like I had this idea that just wouldn't leave me alone, almost like this idea wanted me to be its host. And so it was kind of a fun opportunity to just say yes to that idea and to hold on to it and run with it.
Now, you mentioned that you created this dream job during the pandemic. I mean, we were all going through it. How did you, I guess, muster up the energy to create something like this and be the light for others when we were all going through such a dark time?
Yeah. A big part of it was recognizing the extraordinary privilege that I was experiencing of having a job where I could work from home, and having, support with kids, and, that we all in our family remained healthy throughout the pandemic. Uh, and, in my experience, I just knew that there were families who, even in the midst of all of this horrifying reality, they were still going to the hospital with some weird symptom and being told your child has cancer, and to imagine going through something like that during this time when, like you're saying, we're all stretched so thin and have so few, such small margin, it just overwhelmed me. And I was also watching as the pandemic unfolded that a lot of the support systems that had previously been available to families were no longer functional. That so many of these relational resources, people showing up and volunteering and making meals and bringing experiences of fun, were just impossible to do because obviously kids who were sick were just on extra lockdown. So it just felt really motivating to me to think creatively about how to show up. And again, I've always been kind of an ideas person. As long as I can remember, I would take those little tests in school about like what you're supposed to do with your life, and it always said you should get paid for your ideas, and that always felt frustrating because
Wow.
I'm like, you don't just like go on LinkedIn and see a job that's like ideas person, paying $10 million. But I felt like I had these interesting ideas of ways to create something virtual that would show up for families and provide the same kind of connection and support and fun that I had been providing in my other job. And it just felt like the biggest light bulb that went off was by creating a virtual program for families, we're actually creating something we should have created 10 years ago, because the families that we support, because of their illness, are already isolating. Before the pandemic, these were the families that already knew everything about Purell and about wiping off their groceries when they get home and about staying home because of massive fear of any kind of germs. So it felt like this moment of going, oh wow, to create something that's not just a placeholder until the pandemic is over, but to create something that really works purposefully in this zone, but that also has legs far beyond. It just all the light bulbs went off, and you just kind of can't say no to that. And then I would add that everybody's life kind of grinded to a halt, including anyone that was doing any kind of like volunteering or charitable work. And I really sensed that there were a lot of people that were just tired of like making sourdough or had watched everything on Netflix and were like, please, how can
No
I
more
show
Tiger
up
King.
to exactly? Yes, that was only needed to happen one time. We all needed to go there, but it's good that we're out of it. So, and that was true, that people just were so excited to show up and support and be part of something good for on behalf of other people.
Do you think that if the pandemic hadn't happened, that the Light Collective wouldn't have formed?
100%. Yes. There's no doubt in my mind that this forced it was forced creativity. I feel like there's some old saying about that something is the something about invention. Listeners, you probably know what I'm saying, but yeah, I think you can't, this kind of creativity doesn't often just happen. It usually happens because you're pushed up against a wall. So yeah, I don't think it would have happened.
And I think I show so much love to the pandemic because I think that we look at hard situations as hard situations, and I always look at them now. Last year has totally changed my mindset, and I look at them as defining moments, honestly.
Yep.
And
Yeah. I
and what
mean,
are
I think we could say the same thing about Trump, that he was a disaster, and a lot of important things came to light that needed to be changed. And a lot of people rose up in ways that they would not have risen up. So I'm not saying hooray for the pandemic. I'm certainly not saying hooray for Trump, but I'm saying hooray for the human spirit that can respond to tragedy by rising up in strength and power. And frankly, that's like, those are, I see kind of micro examples of that with these families who are experiencing tragedy, and they're not thankful for cancer, but they're thankful for um, the ways that they get to experience help and support and strength and power in the midst of something that's terrible. So
Let's talk about how the Light Collective shows up for these families. Let us know what you guys do.
yeah, the main program at the moment is what we call our Matchbox program. So it's a monthly experience. Every month we have a theme. So the theme we're working on for this month is camping. My mind just went blank for a second. Camping. Last month we did a medieval theme, we did a construction theme. So we create a box that's full of fun games and experiences and activities for families to enjoy in their home or in their hospital room or in their room at the Ronald McDonald House. We deliver it to their home. We also provide a few opportunities to connect online. So there's a crafts Zoom time. There's a Zoom time where we play games with all the families and our volunteers. And then we end the day in the evening with a Zoom conversation for parents and caregivers. That's a kind of a facilitated conversation and a chance for them to connect and really just kind of care for each other in this unique experience that they're sharing. We also provide a meal for families, so we send them a gift card for Uber Eats or Grubhub, or we just reimburse their costs for whatever takeout meal they want to get for themselves. And we match each family with a host for the day. So they have kind of someone that's checking in on them and showing up on Zoom or on FaceTime to play games with the kids. Those volunteers are all on the Zoom calls that we host because we really want families to know that there are people out there that care about them, that this isn't just about stuff, but it's about bringing families into relationship with us and with each other, and really bringing them back into relationship with their family unit, as they're spending time together. So that's our program at the moment, and we have lots of exciting ideas about how we want to expand that geographically, how we want to expand it, providing more specific services for groups like teenagers who have cancer or single parents who are dealing with this, different populations that have unique needs. So it's this month will be our seventh Matchbox experience, and we're chugging right along.
How many families are you serving at the moment? Or how many did you start with and how many are you serving now?
Yeah, good question. For the first one, we had 11 families that signed up. Last month, we had 25 that participated. And I think all told so far, I think we've served somewhere around like 38 or 39 families total as they've kind of come and gone. So we offer this up for families who have a kid with a cancer diagnosis who's on treatment or within 1 year of finishing treatment. And so that population kind of ebbs and flows, and some people have already kind of graduated out of that time frame. But yeah, it's been fun, and we've been pretty tentative about really publicizing it to this point because we wanted to make sure that we knew what we were doing. But we're kind of in this place now. We started just serving families in Washington. A few families in Oregon have kind of heard about it and signed up. So we said, okay, come on. And now we're working on kind of doing a little bit more publicity across the region. So I expect that we'll continue to grow, and that is a joy.
How do you not internalize all this? I mean, like, I would just be bawling every single moment, and it would hit hard for me doing this heavy work that you're doing. How do you not internalize it yourself and find the strength to continue doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it's hard. I think I feel the same way when I look at the medical providers, who are really kind of on the front lines and in the trenches, or however you want to describe it. Because when I am connecting with kids and families, it's around all of this fun and delight. And, so I'm kind of getting to be with families in an experience where they're tuning into who they are just as people and as kids, and at the end of the day, these kids are all just kids. I think that we all put the cancer story on them a lot more than they put it on themselves, that they just want to play and have fun and, watch a show or play a game or get a toy or be silly on Zoom. And so that really helps. But, I also think that you there's a lot of opportunity for that kind of as you observe these hard stories, for you to feel like almost driven by pity, or like, oh, they're just having such a hard time, and how can I kind of help them in a way that feels a little bit more like saviorism, of how can I kind of step in with all my resources and know-how and make the bad things go away. And I think over the years, what I've learned is it's actually so much more interesting and I think real to take the approach of I'm just showing up and our volunteer team is showing up with these families just so that we can kind of share some space together and experience collectively what happens when we are together, which is that we all get to see we're all struggling with something. We all get to see we're all overcoming things. And that ends up being the best gift of all is the mutuality of it, that it's not kind of one way. I think if I was taking that approach, I would probably feel a lot worse about it because the problems are so unfixable. There's no way that I could save anybody. So the best you can do is just show up and see what happens when we are together in the midst of the hard stuff.
That's beautiful. That is so, oh, my heart right now tugging at the strings. Well, I mean, what a journey, and it's just beautiful. I think so many of us, we have things we want to do. We have meaningful things we want to pursue, or just we want to be entrepreneurs. We want to figure out what we're supposed to do here. Now,
Yeah.
I want to ask you for 3 tips on finding your purpose.
Yeah. Gosh, it's funny to even think about that because, like I said, so much of my story has almost just felt like it all happened by accident. But at the same time, I think, I've always really loved, there's an author and theologian named Frederick Buechner who he describes kind of finding your vocation as the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger intersect. And that has always been such a helpful guide to kind of think about where do those things match up. And even just the discipline of being able to say, what is my deep hunger? Or I'm sorry, what is my deep gladness? What are the things, the spaces where I really feel alive? And I think the second thing is just has to do with um, kind of knowing what is mine to own and knowing what is not mine to own. So I think as you tune into your deep gladness, you also can then helpfully identify like what it does not make you glad, what you're not good at. It's again the kind of tech stuff that I was talking about at the beginning, that stuff does not make me glad. And that stuff is somebody else's deep gladness. So the more that I know what I am good at and kind of who I'm made to be, I can let that be my guide. And I can also feel really great about saying no thank you to the things that don't belong on my plate or to asking for help on the things that I'm spending 3 hours trying to figure out when someone else much more qualified than me could do it in 5 minutes. So knowing kind of what's not mine to own has been helpful. And then I think the last thing I would say is probably that no one is made to do any of this work alone. Whether you're uh, whatever it is that you're pioneering or entrepreneuring, I don't think we're ever intended to do that by ourselves. And to me, the best gift of community is when you're open to the accountability that comes with community, kind of the vulnerable space of being willing to get feedback from people, to have people that offer you constructive criticism and to listen to it and let it change you. Because, gosh, how many things have I done that have been horrible mistakes out of just like operating out of my blind spots, that I wasn't even aware at the time, but probably a lot of people around me were going, that's not great. And the times when I've really purposefully asked for input and asked for correction and asked for accountability have been some of the most helpful and shaping experiences. So I think that's what I would say, and I'm still figuring all of that out. I feel like I'm talking to myself on all three of those things.
Those are great. I'm listening. I know those were for me too. JJ, you are just doing amazing work. Please tell everyone how they can support the Light Collective.
Yes. Well, you can follow us on social media. We are at Light Collective PNW on Instagram and Facebook. And every month we also have a wish list on Amazon that's filled with all of the goodies that we tuck into these boxes. So if you want to join in on that, follow us on social media and we will make sure that you are aware. And we're building our team. So if you want to get involved, just give us a shout on Instagram or Facebook, or check out our website at lightcollectivepnw.org.
You
We'd
can
love to
Google it
connect with
now
you.
too.
Exactly. Google us. Just Google us. We're working that SEO. Don't worry. We show up second, but that's better than not showing up at all.
Yes. Oh, There are some guests on here. I let them know you were doing God's work. That is what you were doing. It is near and dear to my heart. So thank you so much for what you are doing for families, building community, and just thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for giving me the space and being curious and just being a delightful conversation partner.
Yeah, I feel like we could chat forever.
I know, seriously. We're just getting started, right?
Yeah. All right, JJ, thank you so, so much again. You guys make sure to check out the Light Collective. Again, you can Google them, but make sure to follow them as well so you can figure out how you can support and how you can show up as well. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us on the Apple Podcast, Spotify, everywhere where we are available. Hit the link in our bio to sign up for our spotlight, our email list. You might get some discounts. And don't forget to follow us and watch us on YouTube. Thank you again, JJ. It was really great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
All right, you guys, we'll be back next week.